So, today on the podcast, we have a super special, extra awesome guest, Kelly Resendez. And
Hello.
yeah, how are you today?
I'm fantastic.
Good, good. And thank you so much for being on.
I am excited to be here with you and all your listeners.
Yeah, and you've been busy, huh? I was reading over some of the high points of your bio here, and you're a mortgage executive, a VP at Paramount Partners. You wrote a book, huh? Big Voices?
I have. I've actually written 2 books in the last 3 years, so
Nice. We're going to get into
been
those.
a full life.
We're going to get into those. And then you started something called the Foundation of Sustainable Success, and you are a mentor, trainer, and coach in the industry. So why don't, if you want, just introduce yourself a little aside from that and tell us your story.
Yeah, so I've been in mortgage since 1998, and I will say that kind of going into the mortgage industry, I had an opportunity just right in the very beginning to endure a major market change. And everyone in my office was doing amazing, and all of a sudden interest rates went up overnight, and I watched everyone in my office start to suffer. And so out of the gates, I made that decision, like I wanted to create a business that was, market proof and sustainable no matter what. And so really, since I started in the mortgage industry, I've been very dedicated to doing things differently than what other people did. And so that took me down a path of, becoming a top producer in the mortgage industry, doing over, typically on average anywhere between 30 to 40 deals per month.
Wow.
And I had a really solid team where we were doing really well. And to be honest with you, when I first started out, I probably was like most people that was an overachiever. I was really out of balance. I was stressed all the time, and work was really where I got a lot of my self-worth. And through some life events, I kind of had an awakening in early 2004 where I started to just kind of look at my life and say, there has to be more to it than just making money and creating success. And so that started me down a personal growth journey that I've now been on since then. And that's really what's led me to build both companies, Foundation to Sustainable Success and Big Voices, is just to teach other people that there's another way, that we really can create, the life that we want, have an abundance of prosperity and balance and alignment at the same time. Going from a overachiever whose worth was generated from, my work, to just having probably, my worth is coming from who I am and the contributions and the love that I put into the world today.
That's so fascinating. So much good stuff to dig into there. Incredible. One thing you mentioned, this was 98 when you started out. Is that right?
Yeah.
Now, what?
Yeah.
This is before my time in the industry. I was just a humble house painter at that time. But what happened with interest rates then? You said they jumped up virtually overnight, huh?
Yeah, 1%. It was basically, it was one of the largest interest rate moves that we've ever seen. And, there was a bailout that the United States, came out and announced. And it was one of those things that just, boom, the bond market completely deteriorated. And everyone in my office, that I had been watching in mortgage was in the office all the time. And yet I had always been told, go out, create relationships with, real estate agents or other referral partners, and you'll have, more success. But the truth is that's not what other people were doing.
Yeah.
And it stays true to this day. I'm watching loan officers and real estate agents, really not focusing on the most sustainable aspect of their business, which are relationships with people that already know and love them. They're constantly worried about going out and finding a new opportunity when they have so much that's right in front of them.
And believe me, I know it's so hard not to do when you're concerned about closing deals and finding the next deal. Not the next deal next year, where is it going to come from, but how am I going to pay my own mortgage and pay my own bills and close X amount of deals this month, but they think transactionally instead of globally, huh?
Yeah, and I what I've really found is that it comes down to the type of mindset that somebody has. Do they have an abundant mindset or do they have a scarcity mindset? And I'm gonna be honest, the majority of people that are in the real estate and mortgage industry have a scarcity mindset. So that might even mean that the person that's crushing it right now, that's doing, $8, 9, $10 million in production, which is a superstar, is still in scarcity, which means he's spending it all. He's not putting money aside. He just might not be making the right investments because that's what you do when you're in scarcity. You spend it all because you're afraid it's going to go away. And so really what it comes down to is getting that abundant mindset where you trust and know that there's going to be a flow of opportunity and that your job every single day is just to take action towards the goals without worry, without concern, without stress, and that you let go of the wrong opportunities a lot faster.
Fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, you don't hear the word no a lot in the mortgage business or real estate business, and especially when there's so much competition, everyone's just scrambling. So very few people have that clear roadmap, and they say, this is where I'm at, this is where I want to go, this is what I'm going to do to get there, and stick to it, and believe in the outcome, believe in the process instead of changing every day based on the winds of whatever results come to them.
Absolutely. And, quite frankly, because I'm a very honest person, I will share with agents or loan officers that, there is an addiction to chaos. Some people need the energy that a tough transaction or scarcity or procrastination or any of these other things bring. That's how they get their energy. And there's just another way. But it comes down to having to have the right coach, the right mentorship to be able to question, the way that you think. And in order to take your business to the next level, you've got to learn how to think differently.
Yeah.
I learned early on to think like a business person. I had a goal out of the gates that I didn't want to do a lot of the things that needed to be done in my business. And so I always knew what my next assistant was going to do. And it was just constantly building that idea of when I do an additional, amount of volume, my next assistant is going to take this from me. And my next assistant's going to take that from me, because that's the type of mentality that we want to have. And when we're a solo entrepreneur, which most agents and loan officers are, we have a belief that nobody can do anything that we can do as well as we can do it. And that's one of those limiting beliefs that we've got to let go of. I mean, to take our business to the next level, we've got to bring in somebody that's a marketing expert, somebody that is, going to be able to help us get, the right information out in front of the people to make them call us.
Yeah.
And that's just not, we try to do too many things.
Oh God, it's the amount of, the to-do list and the daily, the amount of things that the average realtor or loan officer has to do is mind-boggling. It's such a hamster wheel that it's hard to slow down and look at it clearly. But yeah, you look at it, it's basic math. If your skill set, if your business should be at $250 an hour, let's say, just pulling a number out, then why are you doing, $15 an hour basic admin tasks? That's, you think about how far that's setting you back, right?
Yeah, and it boils down to scarcity again. Is somebody doesn't want to invest the $15 up front in order to be able to spend more time doing the $250 an hour activity. And the truth is, the $250 an hour activity is calling their database, and they have plenty of time and space in their day to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And they don't.
And it's
they
interesting,
don't. And I know that because I coach, hundreds of people on a monthly basis, and that really just comes down to, even if they had somebody to do these things, there's still a block. Like, they still aren't doing the things that are necessary in order to be able to create more opportunities. So it's partly like figuring out how to create the vision and goals and the plan, and figuring out how to focus on who you're being in your business at the same time.
Absolutely. And one thing you mentioned too is, they don't want to spend the money. And I'll actually challenge you on that. I think it's deeper than that because they'll say, I don't want to hire someone, 15 hours a week, 10 hours a week to do my marketing or basic admin stuff. But let me go out and spend, $1,000 at Lake Tahoe this weekend, and let me go buy, drop 60 grand on a truck, right? So I think it's more that the control or the commitment where, the trust. You mentioned the scarcity mindset, and when things are good, they look to expand. But the second that they have a downturn or a challenge or even a seasonal slowdown, I've noticed that everyone just gets into that reactive, like a turtle, and just disappears into their shell. So I think it's more than just spending the money.
Yeah, no, absolutely is. But I mean, and I love the real estate community. Like, don't get me wrong, but there's something that I say to a lot of them that is absolutely true. Like, the reason why you're self-employed is because you can't work for somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
And then I ask them to really think about that. And I'm like, what I mean is not that you can't work for somebody else because you choose not to, because you would be fired because you aren't doing the minimum productive activities that need to be done. And that really is where agents have to start to look at their business and say, how do I hire myself for 4 hours a day to do the productive activities that are going to generate the long-term success, and then the rest of the time have the freedom that I desired, and kind of just look at it that way. But it's a tough business. I mean, when we have too much freedom as human beings and we don't have a roadmap as human beings, we don't do as well.
Yep.
There's a few, chosen people that are out there at the top of every field that don't need anything. Like, they truly are self-sufficient and motivated, but it's few and far between. So you gotta learn how to ask for help. You've got to learn how to be vulnerable enough to go get it. And then you've got to be committed to just working a system that's going to generate long-term sustainable success for yourself.
It's fascinating, and you mentioned a few things there, and I'm jotting notes as fast as I can because this is great. You mentioned the few people that can do this correctly, and not just make money at it, but treat it like a business, right? And I think looking at hundreds, thousands of people over decades with this, I think it's more than just work ethic. It's definitely not intelligence. It's actually probably comes down to clarity. That's probably one of the biggest gifts and the most neglected gifts in real estate and mortgage. Being able to accurately look at your day, your what you're doing. Whether you're prospecting or whether you're just wasting time, looking at your business, holding yourself accountable. Like you said, hiring yourself. And I think clarity is a really, really what you need to be successful.
Critical. It's a critical piece. And, when you look at the recipe, there's so many pieces to what really is going to create an extraordinary life and business, but they're not secrets. I mean, whether it's me, Brendan Bouchard, Tony Robbins, Darren Hardy, you name it, everyone's out there giving the recipes away.
Yeah.
And when you think about why can't most people execute? Like, really, it is because they haven't made the choice to do it yet. Like, they haven't made the choice of executing non-negotiable. So most people have some idea of what they want their life and vision to be, but then when it comes down to it, they don't know how to get themselves to take action. And, there's this great cocktail, because I have a unique personality in the sense that I'm if you're familiar with the DISC profile, I'm a high D, a high I, and a high S, which is unique. So, where most people might just be a high I, well, it doesn't matter. You hire an S or you hire a D to be able to support your business. Like, we can all create it. It just comes down to, like, what limiting beliefs and blocks do you have in your life right now that have prevented you from taking the action that's necessary?
And that's why, that clarity or accurately looking at yourself, what you're doing, those limiting beliefs, that's why hiring a coach or a mentor or being in an accountability group or whatever is so important, huh? Is we never really accurately see ourselves. We just have a very warped self-perception of what we're doing and our worth and our value. Have you ever heard of a gal named Brene Brown, who's an author?
I love Brene Brown. So Brene was instrumental in my life many years ago. And, I'm going to be honest, I probably didn't even know how to spell the word vulnerability until Brene did her TEDx talk.
Yeah.
And absolutely incredible. It's incredible work, and it's so simple.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely so simple about, like, how do we show up with more authenticity? How can we use vulnerability? How can we stop telling ourselves the stories that minimize, our success? And, Brené's work was founded on a lot of research, and all of the research has been since the beginning of time. Like, human beings are just so similar, is that when we get in our own heads, our brains have a tendency to ruminate.
Yeah.
And they will ruminate for the negative more often than the positive.
And spiral.
And so you have to use
down.
awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to use strategy to be able to teach yourself how to refocus on what's satisfactory in your life and let go of the things that are unsatisfactory, because we don't realize how much of our reality we create.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we just do.
I'm reading one of her books now, and it's the kind of thing where I'll read 2 pages and put it down, not because I don't love it, but because I got so much amazing information and insight. I'm like, I need to dwell on that. I need to process that, but I love it that she's such a reluctant advocate for vulnerability. She's like, I'm a tough, Texas girl, and I help myself, and I've been always taught or raised to be self-sufficient. And so she's sort of like dipping her toes in the water of vulnerability, and yet she still finds that, you mentioned that our society is based on productivity and on lack, and that mindset's really holding us back. So I absolutely love what she's putting out there.
Yeah, and it's a tough road because our brain rewards us for achievement, like. Mm-hmm. Just the way that we're wired, when we achieve, we get dopamine.
Yep.
When, there's a lot to be said for, we want to strive for excellence. Like, we want to continue to set and push ourselves beyond where we've gone before, but it doesn't define our worth. Like, we have to become so detached from the outcome that we just, shoulder shrug it when something doesn't go right in our life, which in the real estate mortgage industry is like 50% of the time. Mm. I was just in a mastermind today, and an agent lost 4 deals in 1 week.
Wow.
And most people would be laid out, not able to move forward. And in this situation, they really just mustered the resilience that is needed to be able to move forward. And that's where the recipe is. Mm. It's like you still are moving towards excellence, and you're still achieving, and you're still, a peak performer, and you're still in that realm, but it doesn't define who you are as a human being. Yeah, so when things don't go well, your worth isn't sacrificed.
It's almost like, this will probably be, I don't know if this analogy will make sense, but it's almost like watching a movie and you really care about the protagonist, and, they have so many challenges and everything is going wrong and you don't know if they're going to make it. And if you had seen the end of the movie already and know it's a happy ending, then you would be like, okay, they're going to roll with this. They're going to be all right. And realtors, loan officers, they almost need to see the end of their own movie and know, hey, it's going to be okay. I'm going to be in business. I'm going to make money. I'm going to pay my bills. So let me enjoy the ride and do things correctly along the way with confidence instead of up and down,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, the truth is, the reason why most people don't have as much success as they'd like is that they're so reactive.
Yeah.
Like, they aren't in creation mode.
Yep.
When we create opportunity, we get an abundant flow. When we're just servicing business that comes at us and we haven't taken any action, there's no flow. And so we've got to step out of this self-serving, like what's in it for me, and get back to how do I make a massive impact in other people's lives where as much as I'm asking for business, I'm also in a place of giving business and support.
And that's, of course, the whole mindset, the whole mindset shift is, I'm going to close a deal and make $8,000 or whatever to how many people could I really truly help and connect with and listen to. That's the shift that really changes your whole business, huh?
Absolutely. And I mean, there's in my, foundation to sustainable success system, we really have to go through 3 levels. We have to go through level 1, which is who you're being. Emotional intelligence is being valued much greater than education and or, pretty much even skills. Like emotional intelligence is really what's the defining trait that they're seeing in super successful people. The next piece is you got to get clear on what your vision, your goals, and what metrics you're really trying to shoot for in your business so that you can run it like a business. And then the third level is the execution. And execution is challenge everything that you've ever done before.
Yeah.
Like if you've always done open houses the same way for the last 10 years, start trying something new. You already know the results that you're going to get from that. But when you get creative and you go out and you try something different, see if there's going to be a lift. Do your calls different. Like you got to start to just execute more the same way that a business would. If I'm running ad campaigns, I'm going to just test them, measure them, see where things are constantly. Consumers have completely shifted. The first thing a consumer does now is they Google your name.
Yep.
They need to see your testimonials. So many agents just haven't spent enough time building an online presence for themselves. It's easy to pop YouTube videos up there. If they Google your name, they're going to come up.
Yep.
Like there's so many little things that you can do to be able to build that aspect of your online presence. So when you get the referrals, that you're going to be in a place that you're going to convert on them. Like we're building a foundation. It's not just take it one deal at a time. It's learn from every single deal and then manufacture new opportunity off of that one deal because we can replicate consumers now. We can go out and model match them and try to help more people like that.
Interesting. So tell me a little bit more. That was great info, but the Foundation of Sustainable Success, that's your own organization, and whom are you trying to help with that, and what do you guys do?
Yeah, so in addition to just, running a small mortgage company here in Northern California, I have a coaching company, which is Foundation to Sustainable Success, where we coach loan officers and real estate agents on building a sustainable business model. So we take them from soup to nuts of just doing personal growth coaching with them to building their business plan, goals, going through self-sabotage, going through, emotional triggers that derail them, and really teaching them the skills that they need in order to, create an extraordinary business. And that's definitely, needed right now. The majority of people that are out there don't have coaches, and they don't have people that are in place to be able to, hold them accountable.
Yeah.
And it really is just designed to help take people to that next level.
And I think right now is the scariest time in real estate and mortgage. And people may think it's the opposite because the market is so good and it's thriving and interest rates are so low and everyone's making money. But that's almost the, why it's going to be a big setback tomorrow, because people, when things are good and there's low-hanging fruit, they fail to treat it like a business and to implement their systems and to look at that, that long-term sustainability. And so that's why it's dangerous.
Well, and what I can tell you is that the market disruptors that are out there, either the iBuyer platforms or some of the discount sales, are glad that people are preoccupied with low-hanging fruit. It gives them more time behind the scenes to be building what they want to capture a lot of this business. And it's not going to be all. We're seeing companies, like Open Door, take more market shares in the markets that they choose to. Whether that's Texas, Arizona, places like that, where they're going in they haven't come into some of these other markets yet. And so we've got to be aware that there are consumers that don't value service to the same degree that other people do. Just like the person that goes online and buys their clothes, they don't value the same, service that somebody at Nordstrom's is going to provide to them. And so you just have to know the closer I get to the vision of my perfect client and know that this person values service and personal touch and is going to be willing to pay, full commission for it, the better. And so you want to be taking advantage of the market and working on your business at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell us about the books, Big Voices, and I'm not sure the name of the second one.
Yeah, the second one is Foundation to Sustainable Success. So gotcha. I've got a course that I sell to loan officers, and then we've got the advanced coaching for real estate agents and loan officers. And then Big Voices truly was originally, having gone through personal growth and development for 15 years and some major challenges in my life with family and other things, in my own awakening, I would say, where I went from being, a perfectionist and, a significant holic and other things to like really just stepping into my authentic big voice was I wanted to share a lot of that story and those strategies with people. And that's really what Big Voices came from, was just that desire to, share my story of how I've created the life that I choose. Every day I'm faced with, a lot being in the industry and still, running a business and trying to keep, 3 companies going in tandem. Who I'm being is the most important thing that I can focus on. And I go through my daily rituals. I go through, some of the strategies that I use because I look at, in addition to doing my job, I also have 2 amazing teenagers and I love them, but man, are they, teenagers are very, very good at giving you a run for your money. And I have a rule in my life, which is nobody steals my joy.
Yeah.
And I tell them that they are just absolutely, like, they are just awesome, top of the list for trying.
Yeah.
And so, finding our big voice is really just about stepping into that space where you relinquish the pressure of worrying about what other people think, because you know that you are an authentically good and compassionate human being and that you no longer have to worry about that. Like, you accept that we're all different. Like, without judgment, I'm going to be completely accepting of who other people are. So I don't have to worry. I don't have to have anxiety. I can focus on the things that I have that are grateful and shift my focus away from the things that aren't where I want them to be. And so a lot of, what Big Voices does, in addition to, the book, I've got a course on writing a new story that's designed for anybody that's like, I got to do something different. I've got too much anxiety. I'm not happy in my marriage, my career. Like, something's got to change in my life. And I take you through the steps that you need in order to really redesign your life and start experiencing it with a much greater amount of joy.
Wow. Every realtor and loan officer needs to read that. I think that I don't see how that, no, I'm not just patronizing you either. I don't see how that wouldn't significantly help them. And, you mentioned it, when we operate from a place of joy, what we truly have to give the world, our true personality, our intuition, the results are always good. They're never for the worse.
Absolutely. And I just think, joy it's just a stream that we can tap into. And no matter what happens, like, we get to hold it. Like, I can experience joy and suffering simultaneously and keep my head on straight.
Yeah.
Like, the majority of people out there can't do that. The minute something goes wrong, everything crashes.
Everything
and there's
falls
just a
off
different
the cliff.
way.
Yeah. So you mentioned that also, self-suffering. You use that word a lot and underline the self part, right? So tell us a little about self-suffering.
Yeah, so self-suffering is different than suffering. When I really look at suffering, I look at people that have third world problems. Maybe there is hunger, there is, gender, discrimination and other things that are just above them, or somebody has a physical illness or ailment or whatnot that really is outside of their control. But the majority of challenges in the United States that we have created are ones that come from self-suffering. And that's the suffering that we are created because of our thoughts about situations, not just the situations that we're in. The level of anxiety and depression have reached an all-time high now.
Off the charts.
The number of people that are on, anti-psychiatric medication is exceeding 20% now, which means people don't believe they've got a handle on their life.
Yeah.
And when we look at self-suffering, it's just a matter of we have to ask ourselves, how much time am I spending on my self-care? How much time have I invested in learning new tools and strategies that are going to help me come out of this? When we get stuck or overwhelmed, that's when people just start to shut down a little bit. And so I encourage everyone that's listening just to look at it as a choice. Again, if you really are suffering, and this is nothing to do with mental illness, because I do not believe mental illness is a choice, but when we've created our own challenges because we can't stop overthinking, that's when we need to raise our hand. We need to start working with people that are going to be able to teach us a different way. And when you start investing in self-care and you start investing in, personal growth and development, and just saying, you know what, I'm going to start owning everything that I experience in my life. And every single thing that I experience will be my teacher. It will change your life. Because I can tell you with my kids, I've made a decision that one of my top beliefs is that they chose me to teach me the lessons that I was unwilling to learn on my own.
Yeah.
And so when I've got a child that's doing something that's not something that I would prefer, the first question I ask myself is why is this happening for me?
Yeah.
What can I learn from this? How can I be more patient? How can I be more unconditional with the love and support that I'm giving to them, rather than stepping into some reactive type mode that most people are in, where they feel life happens to them. And so, of course, it's just blame, projection, judgment, a long list of things that we just push externally rather than just owning it internally.
Wow, fascinating. And you mentioned that. I mean, it's so important, and I have this conversation with a lot of people. The level of stress, not only for the average human being in society these days, with social media and all these other things, just our psyches were not made to handle all of these stimuli all day long. I mean, it's just we're completely short-circuiting. But the level of stress, anxiety, depression, and the real estate community especially is so high. And you could say, well, just choose to be happy. Just choose. And that's great, and it sounds wonderful. It makes a good bumper sticker. But how the hell do you do that? And how do you not revert back into your loops and your default settings? And so you actually give people tangible tools to actually make that happen, huh?
Absolutely, because the truth is, we've not been taught. Our brain is wired wrong.
Yeah.
That's just the only way to look at it. When I see how people experience this industry, I'm like, there's a different way. And again, I'm grateful for my experience and my awakening, because I was able to rewire myself earlier. And when you really look at it, it's not, number one, you've got to have the awareness and belief that it is a choice. So I'm going to start developing skills so that I can choose joy.
Yep.
It's not just, like you said, it's not just make a decision. Oh, the power of positive thinking. Great. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Your brain goes rogue on you. It takes control of your life. So we've got to just know that. We've got to separate from the thoughts. We've got to learn how to do that. So, these are just pieces of, the psychological process and how our neuroscience works that, there are a lot of us that are trained to be able to help you, really get a grasp on this, because stress will kill you.
Yeah.
I mean, stress is and must be the one reason, in addition to the horrific nutritional standards that we have in the United States, is the reason why Western disease is so prevalent and not prevalent in other countries.
Yeah.
So it's that combination between, I would say self-care, which is how much do we exercise and what type of nutrition do we have, and how are we managing stress? Because cortisol, is what our body releases, and or we run on adrenaline, which is not an energy source that we should be running on. When a deal goes sideways, I mean, come on. We see people overreact over something and devastate their entire life.
Yeah.
And you're like, was that worth it? And it's just, that's what stress does to us.
And it's interesting. Even 2 years ago, these conversations, I think, were on the fringe of society, and I love it that they're becoming more and more prevalent. Where these are almost topics that are definitely it's so needed, but these are topics that people feel more open about talking about and accepting help, and like you said, raising their hand. And one day, hopefully maybe they'll teach us stuff in schools, right? Wouldn't that be amazing to give kids these life coping mechanisms and this perspective? Maybe you need to go around to schools to add a ninth job to your resume, huh?
Well, I think that there are groups out there. Honestly, the mindfulness movement has taken hold, and there are people that will tell you that the level of consciousness is rising. It's hard to measure, but there are more events as social media has come into our lives. There's negative aspects, right? People care too much about what other people think, or they're spending too much time there. But one of the positive aspects are these messages are getting out on a broader scale, and people are listening to them. They're hungry for it. And so absolutely, I look at my children as being, they got to grow up in my household. So they've been given a lot of this information since day one. But, children are just changing a little bit. It's just interesting and different how every generation is changing just a little bit more. But I agree that conversations about purpose and passion never happened 10, 15 years ago at the dinner table.
Oh, hell
no, and people
right?
are talking about them more. And so now it's a matter of, it's just not enough to talk about them. Let's start living it.
Yeah.
If we're into, wanting to be successful, let's feel successful. Instead of just, I see people post like how much business they're doing. And I'm like, the last time I saw you, you couldn't even stop moving. Like you were so jacked up with energy or complaints about other people. Like that's not success. It's how do we align outside of our life with how we feel internally, and we're just completely present. That's what success is.
Absolutely. And you could tell when it's, when someone's fired up because they're passionate versus if they're, like you said, so jacked up on adrenaline and cortisol. And, it's not just the stress, it's that manifestation of stress, the choices people make that are so unhealthy, and, their relationships and their marriages and their, drinking. And I have a buddy who runs something called Phoenix Wellness, and his name's Mike Chaldone, and it's also affiliated with the Classy Hippie Tea Company. I don't know if you've heard of that in Sacramento, but he actually goes.
No, I haven't, but that sounds fascinating.
I'll connect you with him. Awesome guy. He's just very evolved, super real, and helping people naturally with a lot of these things we talk about. And he actually goes into prisons, some of the worst prisons in California, and has these conversations. About purpose and about.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so he talks about he's gotten a lot of phone calls from people in the real estate industry or mortgage industry about addiction, and they can't come out and ask for help or go public with it, or else they lose their whole client base and they are ostracized and maybe fired. And so the manifestation of that stress and the choices we make are so far reaching.
Anyone that's listening ever, in this moment, like, just know that you create the life. You create your life. And so take hold of it. Like, we can blame our parents, the market, everything else, and we'll spend a lifetime blaming. The minute that you own, I create my life, everything will change. You will start to connect and really just see that there is so much more information out there that's going to help you create the life that you choose.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you about, I noticed in your speaker sheet that you're a big women's rights advocate. And so a lot of these things are especially prevalent or especially needed in that community. And I don't think it's just because you're a woman. I think, you truly care or see the need out there. So tell me a little about how these issues or tactics are especially applied to women.
Yeah, I think the most important reason, because I've been asked before if I'm a feminist, and I, to be honest with you, I believe that the definition of that word has changed so much. I believe that very qualified people should get the best positions, and so I don't, I'm not somebody that believes that things need to be 50-50 or whatnot. But what I do believe is that as women shattered the glass ceiling, we didn't redistribute, household responsibilities. And so in working families where two people are both working and contributing at the same level, there hasn't been, an exchange of household responsibilities. And so women are still feeling completely responsible. And a lot of it is because they won't relinquish control.
Yeah.
I hear women tell me all the time, like, well, the reason why I don't let him do it is he doesn't know how to do it right. And it's like, well, that's your fault then. Let it go. Like, what are your standards? And so as women, we're burning out at a really high level.
Yeah.
And our burnout has just such a ripple effect across every, generation. When you think about the ripple effect on our children, obesity rates have just skyrocketed in children. Well, we know who's doing the shopping. We know who's doing the food buying. So we're just exhausted. And I know a lot of moms who care about nutrition that end up in the McDonald's drive-thru.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that's the part where we've got to figure out like a new way to experience life. And that's what I'm about. I'm about women waking up, like realizing that they've got to live authentically. They need to be able to know where their self-worth is, go after their dreams, and not worry so much about everything. The number of people pleasers and perfectionists that are running around out there, I mean, it's the tale of most women. I get an opportunity to work with a lot of them, and it's just one of those things that it all comes back to that core of just, I've given up my own health and wealth to take care of other people. And that's not what we want to do. We can have an abundant life where our cup's overflowing and then we give to other people.
Yeah.
So I believe helping women is going to help men and children and parents and all of these other people, because if we're depleted, we're no good for anybody.
Amazing. So true. So true. So I have I'm sure you're so busy, but I have 3 more questions for you, if that's okay. And
yeah,
super appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
It's been amazing. I want to schedule you for a podcast every day, but I know you can't do that.
Yay!
So I ask everyone like 3 questions to end it off. So first, the softball fun one. What are your 3 favorite restaurants or bars in Sacramento?
Oh, my 3 favorites. I'm going to tell you, Hawks is my favorite restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So Hawks is Granite Bay okay? Or does it have to be like Sacramento proper?
Anywhere you want.
Okay. All right. So Hawks Granite Bay, which I've heard that they've opened a location in Sacramento as well. So definitely love that. I love Ella. And Ella is in Sacramento. And then just an absolute, I would just say, oldie but goodie for me, and it's someplace I do a lot of business, is just Paul Martin's here in Roseville. So those are definitely my 3 favorite places to go to.
Nice. Are you a big food person? You like to enjoy great food and maybe a drink every now and again?
Yeah, I definitely love food, but I would classify myself as somebody that's very responsible about my nutritional health. So okay. I'm a pescatarian. I only eat seafood. Yeah. I've been off of sugar and meat for many, many years. And so one of the, the one big pillar in my life is definitely my physical and emotional well-being.
Yeah.
I build everything off of that. So I don't eat out a lot.
Yeah.
Pretty disciplined about that.
You're pretty careful, yeah. Do you have you're probably a crazy in shape exercise regime too, huh? You're like running 500 miles every week and stuff.
No, no. No, I am probably more of your, I love going for walks. I walk probably 5 times a week.
Nice.
And I used to be a runner. And one of the things that I had to do in my life was really look at my energy. Energy is a big piece of what creates success. And energy was being depleted when I was running. And so I just didn't have enough of it.
Yeah.
And so for some people, they get energy running or being around other people or things like that. I get depleted being around other people and depleted when I'm doing high aerobic activity. So mostly I do yoga and walking and weights.
And that's great too, because you consciously made that choice. You paid attention to what added to your energy and what revived you instead of what depleted you. Yeah, interesting. You got to recharge your batteries. Yeah, yeah. And so
yeah.
So here's a harder question for you. What advice would you give your younger self? I mean, you're young now, but maybe 15 years ago or when you were just starting out in the business. What advice?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one for me because I'm such a believer, again, that life happens for you. And I tried this with my kids where I'm like, I'm going to teach my kids all the lessons that I wish I would have known when I was younger. And it doesn't work. Like, it honestly doesn't work. It's almost like, I had to just get back to be the change that I want to see with them, which is a great Buddhist principle, and allow them to make the mistakes that are necessary to create, their own belief system, because information is not helping us in life. I mean, look at Google. You have access to every ounce of information out there. Like, every bit of how to eat, how to save money, how to do anything that you could ever imagine is on the World Wide Web now. It's just more experience, I think, is what does things. But if there's one thing that I would have told my self is just learn how to focus on what is already satisfactory in your life. Because that took me a long time. I still wanted to talk about the problems or, just the learning lessons or whatnot. And years ago, I let go of that, like where I'm just like, it's just a part of what happened in my life and I don't put any focus on it. But I kept telling the story over and over and over again. It was just such a part of who I was that it just drove it deeper. And so if I could go back, 15 years, I would tell myself, learn how to focus on what is already awesome. If there are things in your life that aren't awesome, take your focus off of it.
Interesting.
Like, unless you can build skills and do other things like that, whether that's in relationships, because I'm divorced and being in an industry where I left originating loans. Now it's been 8 years and started, a new adventure with Paramount. And it was one of those things where, there were a lot of things that were tough. And I think when we focus on what's tough, we get more of it. And I've learned now that the more I focus on what's great, the more greatness I get.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. And how
could
and
one of my favorite quotes, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Abraham Hicks, but one of my favorite quotes comes from Abraham Hicks, which is, everything always works out okay for me. And that's truly that reminder that we should just tell ourselves every single day, is just, everything always works out okay for me.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And so where, I'm sure when people hear this, there's a lot of realtors, loan officers, or anyone who would love to, connect with you, ask questions, possibly do coaching with you and read your books. So where can folks in Sacramento or anywhere find you and connect with you?
Yeah, best thing, if you want to shoot me an email at kellyresendez.com. I can give you any of the resources, but my websites that you can find so much information. I publish regularly. I've got tons of free resources for you out there as well. Is ftss4success.com and then bigvoicesrise.com.
Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're my new favorite person.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure.
Very uplifting conversation, and we really appreciate you, so keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
All right.